Hey out there, today is Monday, August 31st, 2020. My name is Matt Fury, and you are listening to The Rough Cut. Well, hello once again, my friends. How are you? Is it a good day where you are? Because it's a very good day where I am. Because I'm talking to my very special friend in L.A., Avid's own video evangelist, Burbank Mike Krulik. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Matt.
How's our emissary in Hollywood doing?
Hanging in. It's another day. It's beautiful outside, and I'm inside working from home.
Ah, I see. Well, I know you're not the type to do a lot of bragging on yourself. Very humble guy, but let's be honest. You're out there, you're talking to the best of the best. You're showing off Media Composer to the studios, the editors, the artists. Anything fun going on these days? What are you showing them? What's happening?
Well, we just released version 2020.8 of Avid Media Composer, which is great. Just came out this week. But actually spending a lot of time showing people how to work remotely. So we, showing Avid Edit on Demand, showing Media Composer Cloud VM, so people can work at home if they want or need to.
Well, we haven't talked in a little bit, but you happen to be on a podcast that I'm quite excited to share with people. I'll play a little game with you, Michael. I'm gonna throw some things out to you, and you tell me what comes to mind. So, when I say to you, Pirates of the Caribbean, what do you think of?
Johnny Depp.
I get that, but Johnny Depp is not on the show. Next week we'll have Johnny Depp. Okay. So all right. Okay. Let me give you some more. So, Pirates of the Caribbean, Rain Man, The Lion King, Gladiator, Interstellar.
Oh my God, they all were cut on Avid Media Composer.
Mr. One Track Mind. Dark Knight, Sherlock Holmes, The Last Samurai, The Thin Red Line, Driving Miss Daisy.
Movies I love.
Think music.
Music. Oh my God. They use Pro Tools.
Hans Zimmer.
Hans Booby.
Exactly. Hans Zimmer, legendary rock star, film composer. Hans Zimmer is our featured guest today. Can you believe that?
That's incredible.
Isn't it? I'm super psyched to share this with everybody and share this with you. And let me ask you, Michael, when you're out there doing these amazing demos of yours and you're talking to people, does music come up a lot?
It actually does, because in Media Composer, a lot of the editors are, cutting in temp music. Some of it actually makes it into the cuts. But yeah, music is a big part of, the editorial process before it even gets to Pro Tools.
Well, as you know, I have some new friends at extrememusic.com. They've been doing production music, production audio for feature film, television, documentaries, indie films, any kind of project you've got, demos. Like, I think, Michael, maybe they could help you up your demo game a little bit. For over 20 years, they've been doing this, and they get this really cool website. And this happens to me all the time. I get on here and I end up spending like 3 hours just noodling on the website looking for all kinds of stuff. So I pulled it up here, and I thought I would have a little fun with you. And let's see if we can come up with some music for your demos or for you in general. So I'm just going to go to extrememusic.com here, and you can search on pretty much anything, any kind of keyword, lyrics, composer, whatever. So I got Burbank Mike Krulik here. I'm going to search on, let's see here, sexy.
Oh, God.
Playful.
Uh-oh.
Latin. There we go.
Watch it.
I'm just going off your Tinder profile. So, I got a lot of good stuff here. Let's just, let's see what Extreme Music has to offer us. Come on. That is you.
Hey, I'll take it.
We could play you on.
Hey, can you send that to me? That's going to go on my podcast.
Any demo you do. Ladies and gentlemen, L.A. Michael K., Burbank Michael Krulik, here to talk to you about Avid Media Composer. Is that gorgeous or what?
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
I'll be fair. Let's do it to me too. Let's we'll do it on the rough cut. Okay. Okay. There's an album called The Devil's Cut. Let's see what we got here. I like it. That's me.
I like that one better.
Yeah, that's talking to me. I've been thinking about a new theme.
That's like going into the wrestling ring.
Yeah, maybe not. Ah, cool. All right, let's see what else they got here. Wait, there's actually a track on here on this album called Hell Hath No Fury. It's a pick 'em. I love them both. I don't know. Yours was good, but mine's pretty cool.
I think yours are better.
I can't pull off yours the way that you could. Again, if you're doing a movie, doing a TV show, you're doing a doc, you're doing whatever, great music can take you from good to great. And that's what extreme music does. In fact, we got Hans Zimmer on here. I could search on Hans Zimmer. So let's see. Should work on my typing. Okay, let's see what we got. Oh, yeah. This isn't a podcast anymore. I feel like I'm charging up a hillside in Ireland, about to go into battle, not just doing a podcast. This is what great music is all about.
I see the dry ice and the clouds.
That's what's been missing from this show all along. Well, Michael, it's always a pleasure to speak to you, but I don't want to delay things any longer. I got Hans Zimmer on the show. Michael, are you excited to meet Hans Zimmer?
I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
Well, we can't just bring him on with anything, so let's see what we got. There we go. That's how you bring out Hans Zimmer. Here we go, Michael.
Go for it.
Hans.
Yo, how are we?
We're fantastic. How are you?
Mighty average is the best we can do.
Hans, I've been studying you for the past few days.
You have?
Yes.
How unfortunate for you. What a waste of a good life.
It's not true at all. A lot of information out there. In fact, there's almost too much.
Well, most of it is lies, so, Go on. But what are you going to ask me?
I guess where I'd like to start is by touching on some things that are more recent events, both of which are unfortunate. The first being the passing of legendary composer Ennio Morricone. I know he's someone you have a great deal of admiration for, and I'd like to take this opportunity to get your thoughts on his impact in the world of cinema as well as upon you as an artist.
Learned a lot from him, and really the reason I got into film scoring was because as a kid I grew up without television. My family thought television was, the end of civilization as we know it. They probably were right. So I snuck into a cinema and I saw Once Upon a Time in the West, and it was like those amazing Sergio Leone images with Ennio's beautiful music. And up till that point, all I ever heard was really, the classics and Bach and etc. But if you actually listen carefully to the score of Once Upon a Time in the West, you realize it's full of Bach. It's just he's done some really tricky, clever things to it. And so I could find this connection very easily. And plus, the amazing images, and I was going, that's what I want to do. See, my theory is that we actually made a terrible mistake by figuring out that we can record without images and take the performer or the performance out of the music, the visual clues we get by watching a performance, by watching an orchestra, by watching a pianist. But weirdly, movies sort of put that back for me. Even though it's not a performance of the music, it's still something that, I love that directors are actually there to complete to complete the music with their images.
That's a perfect way to look at it. The other thing that's of the moment, of course, is this COVID-19 pandemic and all the related lockdowns and the impact it's having on the film and TV industry. And I'm wondering how it's affected your work in ways both big and small, because it feels like your particular skill set and the role you play in the storytelling process might actually be better suited for this than others.
There are two things. One is I know that all my favorite musicians' tours have been cancelled. And for instance, I just finished a Ron Howard movie, and I love the guitarist Derek Trucks. I'm such a fan of his. Rightly so, because, all you have to do, go on YouTube, do B.B. King, Derek Trucks, and you see that one little performance of Derek playing and B.B. King leaning over and going, that's about as good as I've ever heard that played. And Derek sort of blushing. And you really do know there's a master at work here. And I thought, Derek's tour probably got cancelled. Maybe he'll want to come and play on this movie. And so those are the advantages. The disadvantages is I'm forever running around. I mean, the reason I'm late for this interview is partly because I'm working on, let's see, I have somebody in Australia, I have somebody in Vienna, I have somebody in England, and I have somebody on the East Coast. So I'm trying to keep all these musicians busy. And sometimes it's up to 70 musicians, in different parts of the world that I'm keeping off. I forgot Hungary. My director right now is in Budapest. and he's shooting, so he's busy during the day, and then at night, and he's such a gentleman, and he's so kind, because I know he's beat, I know he really wants to think about tomorrow's shoot, but, here we are on some weird version, there are 1,000 versions of Zooms and FaceTimes, and this is safe, and this is not safe, and whatever, and we're talking about the film, and we're making music together, but there is one thing which I always suspected, and I always knew. I think it's something that you guys at Avid figured out a long time ago. Real time really does mean real time. And it doesn't matter how much computer power you have. We, many years ago, before your time, built our own sampler, which originally we started, and then Avid got very interested in it and bought what we were doing, which meant I never got my sampler until I actually got somebody else to go and build it. But one of the things we figured out is it doesn't matter how advanced computing is in, for instance, the medical industry or in my world, in computer graphics. They don't have to work in real time. And for a musician, real time really is real time. And I don't even know if there's something below microseconds, nanoseconds. And you sit in a room, you don't even look each other in the eye, but the music is entirely and absolutely determined by how you hear yourself, and that you hear yourself in real time. There is a reason orchestras sit very close together, not only because there is something sonically fabulous if you move large quantities of air at the same time. 32 violins all bunched together will have a different sound than COVID violins were, scattered all over the place. But in a funny way, I'm not seeing it necessarily as a bad thing. I'm just seeing it as a new way of listening or looking or doing things and adapting to it. The most important thing is to keep my people busy and to keep my people healthy during this time.
Well, I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump ahead and delete the question about can you do more than one thing at a time. If this truly does have a more lasting impact on how audiences experience films, with possibly more emphasis being placed on the home experience as opposed to big theaters with incredible sound environments, would that do anything to change your process or how you look at composing and orchestrating a score?
Well, weirdly, I've been working towards that I didn't know about COVID, but I saw my kids being on their iPads. I myself, I'm on my iPad. I consume things on the iPad. I consume things on a laptop. And I started this in 94. I started sampling orchestras and instruments and doing it in 5.1. And we actually did finally build our own sampler. And the difference is we have a layer that I don't think any commercial sampler has. We have a layer which is 32 microphones, which has gotten stuff a bit bigger. So 32 microphones feeding into a submix of 5.1 or 7.1 or whatever you want to do for each sound. So rather than you having, which I think is sort of a slightly clumsy way, that you can select your microphones. You can select your far ones, but there's still submixes. We just record every microphone. We have every microphone in the sampler. So if you do something which is sort of big and Batman-ish or Dark Knight or Inception or something like this, so it uses a huge sound, and the next second you're working on a Nancy Meyers romantic comedy. You can still use the same orchestra, the same samples, but you just bring the sound in and you just get more defined, and you basically feature a smaller section and less ambience. So it creates a versatility which wasn't there before. And because we've been doing it for so long, people pride themselves on the amount of articulations they have in the sample library. But for instance, we spent 2 weeks recording triple P violin section, 32 players, because playing really, really, really quiet is really hard and really hard to capture and really hard for everybody to sit still for all those hours. So, yeah, we're a bit mad. To really answer your question, I felt forever that it was vital to, we all have 2 ways we can look at technology, and we can look at music technology, which is we can go and head towards the lowest common denominator, or we can try to head towards something that doesn't even exist yet, and we're just hoping that, it's not hoping, I mean, it's a fact that our processing speed will be fast enough that the technology will come down in price and become reasonable to, allow us to have the highest possible quality. And for me, the highest possible quality is that I've always recorded in 5.1, because it doesn't make sense to me that I hear in surround, look, there's a guy drilling down the road with a jackhammer, and I'm hearing it in 5.1. It's a horrible noise. So why can't I hear a beautiful noise in 5.1? My world is 5.1 or more. So why are we forever stuck on stereo at best?
Well, you mentioned all the different projects you have going on right now. I know you have many interests within the field of music composition, and you have this one called Bleeding Fingers. Now, that seems like kind of an aggressive title for a man as sophisticated as yourself.
Wasn't my idea. Well, but no, but I'm totally into it. All right, so this is, let me explain this to you. Over the years of a long and somewhat turbulent career in places, I've always made a point of hiring fabulous assistants who'd stay with me for a couple of years. And there's a big difference between real life, real time, experiential learning. You're involved in a movie, and it doesn't matter if you're making the cup of coffee. You're in the conversation. You're part of the conversation. You see how it's happening. And Harry Gregson Williams, John Powell, to just name a couple of guys. I can go on and on and on and on. At one point or the other, Ramin, all right, I'll give you a great one. Ramin Djawadi, Game of Thrones, Westworld.
Sure.
I didn't even know Ramin could play, and we were stuck right at the beginning of Pirates of the Caribbean. I'd written this tune, and there was, what is important in this movie is the first sword fight. No first sword fight, you might as well just go home and forget about the movie. And I was mucking around, I couldn't make it work, etc. And Ramin very politely, he is incredibly polite, said to me, would I mind if he had a go after I went home? Yeah, sure, go knock yourself out, Just make me another cup of coffee before all that. And we came in the next day, Gore Verbinski and Jerry Bruckheimer, and, played them whatever I'd done. And then I remembered, oh, hang on, Ramin, you were going to try something out. And he said, yeah, well, I just had sort of a feeling and sort of an idea. And he'd taken my tune and he scored it to this scene, and it was jaw-dropping. It was like Gore had shot his movie to this. And at the same time, it was unobtrusive, and it didn't feel like he had manipulated in any way. It just was brilliant, perfect storytelling and brilliant, perfect musicianship. And listen, you can ask him. I said to him, okay, that's the last cup of coffee you ever made for me. And thus it became true. He then came and worked with us on the first Batman movie, and he had sort of, I don't know if you know Air, but it's an old church, and, right under the attic are these little rooms, and he had the furthest to climb every day, all the way up, into the belfry. And Chris loved hanging out with Ramin, because Ramin is polite, and he's nice, and he's talented, as opposed to having James and me, and we were just absolutely we were in full Batman mode, which meant I remember coming up one day, we were just badly behaved, constantly badly behaved, and, just too much energy. You didn't want to be in the same room as us. I remember coming up one day, a staircase, and it was like up to your chest. It was cigarette smoke that had just sort of settled, It was, and we would work till 3 or 4 in the morning, and then have a chat, and then go back to the hotel and have a drink, and then etc. etc. And Ramin was totally civilized, and so Chris and him got on really well. And when Jonathan Nolan started to make his own things, Chris suggested him because it was a perfect fit. And then I remember him working on Game of Thrones, and I didn't really know what it was, and I said, Are you sure about this? I mean, have you ever heard of the golden cage? It's like, I don't know where this is going to go, and him saying, no, I think this will be cool. And, I'm so glad that I was so wrong and he was so right and he stuck with it. Again, I didn't answer your question. Bleeding fingers. So, hang on. So here was the thing. My partner, Steve Kofsky, and my friend, Russell Emanuel, they kept observing me. I mean, Russell's in the same building as me. Steve's in the same building as me. And they thought the way I worked was completely inefficient, I'd get a new assistant. Harry would be a new assistant. And then after a while, he would start doing Tony Scott movies or whatever, after a long while. And I kept moaning about the simple fact that all these young people who came in and interned for us were lumbered with extraordinary student loan debt. And I'm not going to name any names, but, one of my very, very, very favorite people, she went to college to study modern chamber music. And she has a sizable student loan debt. And I thought, how come that school, I mean, like on the first day, they should have said to her, okay, great. So you have a passion for modern 20th century chamber music. Do you realize that you can never, ever earn your student loan back with that? So it just infuriated me. So Russell and Steve said, look, we have this empty lot. How about we get our architect and we'll build a building which is purpose-built for young composers coming out of music school, not coming out of music school, who cares? Just have talent and be able to behave yourself during lunch. It's like, you need to be socially acceptable at least.
That lets me out.
Well, yeah, probably. Me too. But the whole idea that we could find a way of not having them leave music school and earn a living making music, the thing they wanted to do so much from day one, which was really important to us. The second thing which was really important to us, it doesn't matter how rich or how poor you are, well, because you're really poor, because you're only owing all this money to different places of higher education, you should not be disqualified from getting a job because you lack the wherewithal to buy the gear, right? So we equipped all these rooms with really great stuff. The other thought that came to us was, if you're working on a television series, for instance, I mean, these days, everything is chock-a-block full of music, and there are the big cues you want to handle, and then there's the car chase, which is going to take you forever and nearly kill you, and then there are the little cues that you think aren't really important, and so you leave them to last when you're completely wrecked and completely tired, but they really are really important because they usually say something specific about character or whatever. So we thought the way things are going, not one person can handle it. The other thing is, if you have a community that speaks to each other, most of my ideas are not my ideas. Most of my ideas came up in having a conversation with Steve Mazzaro, having a conversation with Ramin, having a conversation. I learned more from John Powell than I think I've ever learned, than anybody would ever have given me in music school. So the idea that you have a community that can work together, that can help each other, that isn't snobby or elitist or self-entitled and goes, hey, let me go and handle this tiny 3-second cue that defines the character like nothing else. The 3 seconds might take you a couple of days to just think about. It seemed like a really good way. Plus, it felt important that we created something that would let filmmakers and television producers into our world. And if it all goes horribly, horribly wrong, I'm there. Somebody who's done a couple of movies is there to go, hang on a second. What we should do is, let me go and save the baby.
Well, I'm sure they're happy to have you there for that. You mentioned Ramin, you mentioned Henry. Something that we talk about a lot is mentorship. And I know that you were mentored, or one of your mentors was Stanley Myers, whose work notably appears in The Deer Hunter. And you've talked about Ramin and Henry Jackman. How does one mentor in the film composing world? I know in picture editing, a lot of times they'll just entrust an assistant or somebody coming up to, here's a scene. Why don't you try and cut this scene and see how it goes? How were you mentored and how do you approach mentoring other people?
Look, I'm really lucky. I left school with less than, I think I left school with knowing less than when I entered school. So, never went to university, never went to music school. Joined a band, and then, of course, couldn't earn a living, playing pubs and workingmen's club during the 80s in England. And very luckily, I met Maggie Rodford, who was running a jingles house for George Martin called Airedale. I started working with them. I started working with George, and George was actually the first person who truly sort of took me under his wing and showed me a thing or two. And I think I did my first session with Jeff Emmerich engineering. So this went on for a while, and Stanley was part of that team, and Stanley had a terrible handwriting. Not that it mattered; everybody else was complaining about it. Nobody could read his score. As his orchestrator said, he's written some really good scores for Stanley, just because he couldn't quite read what Stanley had written. But Stanley was brilliant, and I would do these sessions for Stanley where he would just plonk, without saying anything, just plonk a piece of music in front of me. And I was so in awe of him and so intimidated by him. I never had the guts to say to him, actually, Stanley, I don't read music. So I'd just make things up. And he never said anything, but I think he quite liked it. Because one day I got this phone call, and he didn't say hello or anything. He was just like, do you want to do a movie with me? I went, yeah. And he goes, good, and hung up. And so we did a film called Success, the Best Revenge, and then we did My Beautiful Laundrette, and we did all sorts of things. And one of the things with Stanley was he loved coffee, and he had bought himself this extraordinarily complicated Italian espresso machine, but he hated technology. So he didn't know how to use the espresso machine. So it was my job to figure out how the espresso machine works, which meant I could hang out in all these meetings with Stephen Frears and Nick Roeg and all these great directors, not say anything. And in exchange, Stanley would show me how the orchestra worked. Or just introduce me to members of the orchestra. I mean, I was thinking about her last night. Skylar Kanga, who's the great harpist who's played on everything from Star Wars onward. I mean, she's still playing. She's still really busy. I just worked with her recently on Interstellar, and I just worked with her on Wonder Woman. So she's still going, and we were talking about, we've been making music together in one way or the other for 30 years. She was one of those people, I'd go up and I'd go, okay, the harp, how does it work? And how does it not work? What should I not do? So I learned because people were generous and gracious, and they would tell me how stuff worked. While I was much more into the technology, I got into computers really quickly, figured out that thing that was designed really for accountants, spreadsheets, could actually be subverted very easily into something that could play back music, because music is in a grid, and accountancy seemed to have been in a grid as well. So, for a while I was sort of one of the synth guys in the London session scene.
I believe you call yourself one of the lowly synth guys.
Oh, very low.
I've read a few different things about how you begin your process, and they seem to differ a little bit. You mentioned Interstellar, and I believe the story on that one was that Christopher Nolan had given you just a treatment or an outline, just a short description of what he was thinking, and you went off and you developed from that.
Yeah, Chris and I, I don't know why, but Interstellar is really the outcome of, I think, something that happened before, if I really think about it. I had, years before, I just finished Sherlock Holmes, and we were having a premiere in London. And I was speaking to Chris, and I said, hey, why don't you come on? You know Guy Ritchie, you know everybody. Why don't you come, see the movie, and come to the party afterwards? Because really what I was doing is I was soliciting emotional and moral support because I'm no good at parties. And Chris is no good at parties either. Whatever he says, I don't think he's that good at parties. And I was deadly tired. I'd already said, I need to take some time off. I'm going to go on a holiday. So we're both at a party, and of course what happens is we sneak off into a corner and we start talking about Inception. And so rather than going on holiday and rather than being party animals, we came up with this plan for the Ram, which has become a bit of a millstone. But at the time, it seemed like a really good idea and really new idea. And the party was on a Tuesday, and by Thursday we were at Air Studio with a huge brass section, a brick on the sustain pedal of the piano in the middle of the room, and making noise. One other thing about that is it was written into the script. I mean, it wasn't as specific as what we were doing, but the idea was written in the script. It was a story point. After Inception came out, all that stuff always got basically misused in trailers, just as a way of bridging one non sequitur to the other. And I kept thinking, don't they realize we actually made a story point out of this? You're just using it because you don't know how to cut from one bit to the next. And so that was one party. And then there was another party where Chris was sort of looking at me and he's going, if he were to write something, not tell me what the movie's about, would I give him one day to write whatever came to me from the page? And I said, yeah, that sounds really like fun. And he even asked the director I was working for at the time if it was all right if I took a day off to go and write this. And this letter arrived, and I opened it, and it was very thick paper because he had typed it, and he wanted me to know that there was no carbon copy. And I'll never tell anybody really what's in it, but it was very personal. It was very, very gentle, and it was very about the relationship of a father to their son, because he knows my son, Jake. He knows him very well. Plus, he knows about our relationship. So I, in turn, sat down and wrote this very, very fragile little piece. And it was a Sunday. Phoned Chris's house at about 10 o'clock at night, and his wife, Emma, answered the phone. And I said, I think I got something. Do you mind if I send it over? And she goes, well, actually, he's curiously antsy. Do you mind if he comes over? So Chris came over, and I can never look at anybody when I play them something for the first time, just in case that a shadow of disgust, sort of wanders across their face, So I look away while I played, and Chris is on the couch, and so I turn around and I basically say to him, so, well, what do you think? And he goes, suppose I better make the movie now. I'm going, well, what is the movie? And he starts talking about space, and he starts talking about this hugely epic thing. And we talk for quite a while about the scale and everything. And I finally stop him and I say, but Chris, I've just written you the most fragile piece of music. And he goes, yes, but I now know where the heart of the story is. So he went off shooting to this piece of music. I think he even wrote a bit of script. Or he was listening to it while he was finishing the script. And I kept saying, all right, when you're finished, when can I see the film? And I kept going down to the set, and then they went to Iceland, and we'd be on the phone, and he'd be going, well, I need something for a scene, and it's this and this and this and this. And it was very, very complicated. And I said, you better send me some footage, because I can't even remember what you said. He said, you know something? We've done pretty well so far. I mean, our sense of tempo, our sense of storytelling seems to be pretty in sync. Just write the piece. And if it doesn't work, I'll send you some footage. And I phoned him the next day after, I said, I wrote something and sent it over. I said, how's it going? And he goes, no, absolutely, it fit down to the frame. It's only later that he told me that after he hung up the phone the first time, he sort of went, this is really not a good idea. I think I need to send Hans some footage. This is really putting him on the spot. But it doesn't matter. I mean, we had a similar sensibility, and it really does help that our editor, Lee Smith, who I first worked with in the early 90s in Australia, I mean, we were all truly in sync, down to a frame. We did it on Inception, where Chris wouldn't let me have the picture for the longest time because he liked the process of me writing from my imagination as opposed to being held hostage by the editing, by the cut. And I remember actually not being annoyed, just being me, just being, slightly obnoxious. So I wouldn't write the titles on the pieces I would send them. I wouldn't tell them what scene they were for, because I wanted to see if they would resonate enough that they would know where to put them. And there was one which was like vital for me, where it's a woman on a ledge and she's just about to jump and her shoe drops down the ledge. And I needed to hit that with a certain note in my mind. But I didn't know if anybody else would ever figure that out. And when I finally got to see what Chris was up to, when I got to that scene and bam, like you're sitting under a tree and an apple just falls into your hand, it just they absolutely knew what I had written and where it had to go.
Well, that helps clear things up, because I was a little confused about that special process you've had with Chris as opposed to the sort of the more traditional methods of scoring to the picture. And you mentioned, Lee Smith. You've worked and continue to work with some very talented editors: Lee, Pietro Scalia, Joe Walker, Eddie Hamilton, Tom Cross. I know I'm leaving out a tremendous roster of others.
Well, I'm working with Joe right now.
This is Dune, correct?
Yeah.
Well, how much interaction is there between you and the picture editor? Because it's not exactly clear how often a composer would have to interact with them.
Well, Joe and I worked together for the first time in 1988, so I just thought I'll put that into perspective. Secondly, Joe went to music school. So what easily happens is that Joe and I will start having a conversation which completely leaves out the director. So we have to be very careful, and we have to be very, we have to be on our best behaviors, because we can geek out on some avant-garde nonsense or some ancient music nonsense like in nobody's business. But the advantage is that Joe understands that he is the drummer in my band, basically. All good editors I've ever worked with have an insane sense of rhythm. A gift of rhythm and courage. Joe, 12 Years a Slave, the courage in that movie of just holding onto a shot, that's Joe as well, because every director is a little insecure. Of course you're a little insecure. We're all a little insecure. But part of it is the editor is the person that says to you, it's okay. You can hold on to that note, or you can hold on that shot, or you don't need to play any music here. It's okay. The silence is great.
I'm glad you brought up Joe's musical training. I was speaking in recent weeks with the editors of a German series called Dark.
Right.
They were talking about working with a composer, Ben Frost.
Yeah.
And they said that they loved working with his music, but one thing that they really enjoyed is they were able to work with his stems. As much as you trust Joe, is he able to work with your stems in the picture editing process?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, they all can. Pietro Scalia has written some good music out of my stems. No. There is an Gladiator, look, Gladiator is a really great example of how it all works at its best. The cutting rooms were at my studio. So we truly, we were just walking into each other's rooms all the time. Actually, I did the same with Barry Levinson on Rain Man. I did the whole movie in his office. And I'd do something and Pietro would hear it and he'd go, that bit is good, and I'm going, no, this other bit, I love this other, and he's going, no, you don't understand. And he'd put it up to a scene and he'd show me the sum total of the images and the music and why the piece of music that I actually preferred wasn't as effective as the piece of music he liked. He truly was my best friend on Gladiator, because that opening battle, which I wrote before they shot it. So it was a much longer piece. And, like all things in film. The terrible things about film, and Gladiator is a perfect example because it's a Ridley Scott film, so it looks beautiful. But films inevitably are too long. So the first thing that goes are all the beautiful shots, because they don't say anything other than that they're beautiful, right? They don't advance the story, they don't have exposition in them. And the same goes for battles, So the first thing that got shorter was the battle all the time. And Pietro, bless him, would always cut in 4-bar increments so that it would still make musical sense. I could always still fix it.
Pietro, he's a genius.
Have you tasted his cooking? I mean, he's a good editor, but he's an amazing chef.
Well, he hasn't invited me over, but I'll try and score myself an invite at some time.
Great.
You talked about the example of the shoe dropping, and you wanted to make sure you hit on that. And I was just curious what your philosophy is in general about scoring to distinct actions within a scene. Not so much the whole scene itself, but scoring to things that happen in the scene.
Lots. Okay. When I started out with Stanley, one of the things I figured out really quickly was how to hit every cut. See, Stanley hated writing action scenes, quite rightly so. So I was always lumbered with writing ghosting the action scenes, and I would hit every cut. The good thing is if you listen, and one of the things we learn as musicians early on is it's not how well you play, it's how well you listen to the other people. So one of the things I absolutely heard and remember to this day was Stanley going, you know something? Anybody can hit a cut. But sometimes a little reaction to a cut is much nicer. So I'm careful. I go through it and I figure out what are the things I want to hit? What are the things I want to hit late? And then I do something which I always have to persuade my editors a little bit that we can get away with it. If it really is an action scene and I want to really shock the audience or do something, that wakes them all up, We've been in this car chase for half an hour, so there's very little new to say. So if I actually need to go and pull out all the stops, I hit the cut a frame early because the ear works faster than the eye. It's like just that moment of disorientation. Why did he? Oh, I see. Why he did that. That sort of thing that just throws you. So it's not just about what do you hit in a scene. It's, how late you want to be. Is it a reaction or is it, you can influence the reactions tremendously with a frame.
So I've heard you talk a lot about film scores needing to stand on their own as just music. And film scores come in all different shapes and sizes and styles and can be very effective and powerful without a big motif or theme or melody. But without those elements, do they still have the ability or have as much chance of standing on their own as music?
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to think of something that doesn't have a lot of melodic content and still is really exciting or you want to listen to. Look, I grew up with all sorts of music. I grew up with classical music, but I grew up with things like Tangerine Dream and, the electronica stuff. And sometimes I wonder, because I can sit there and hear a sequence just noodle away for hours. It's just fine that nothing changes and that there's no great event happening in it, I mean, music is music. We can analyze it forever. All I know is, look, let me tell you something. I always had stage fright, and one day a bunch of musicians ganged up on me and said, you know something, you really need to leave your windowless room, you need to go on the road, you need to go and do a few shows. And I'm going, no, I got stage fright, I can't do that, And they basically said, everybody's got stage fright, so don't give me this, and actually I was so trying to not drop names, but I have to drop names. So I said, no, I'm not doing it. And it was Johnny Marr and Pharrell Williams and Anne-Marie Simpson. And as they're walking off the room, Pharrell turns around and he just looks at me, he goes, I'm doing the Grammys. Do you want to play guitar at the Grammys? And I thought, only an idiot would say no. So I said, okay, I'll do that. So that was a good start to the sort of the life career. And really, I think it changed how I approach films these days as well. I realized you actually have to look the audience in the eye. You can't hide behind a screen for the rest of your life. You actually have to go and be courageous enough to go and do that. Real time is terrifying, but that's okay. What was your question? I can't even remember. It's always.
It doesn't matter what the question is. It just matter where the answer goes.
Oh, yeah. No, I know what it was. I know where I wanted to go with this. So, one of the people in my band is Niall Marr, Johnny Marr's son. And Niall Marr's like 21 years old, and he hasn't said a lot, and we're rehearsing, etc. And I'm trying to figure out what the set is going to be for Coachella. I'm going, well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to throw out Lion King, because that's a kid's movie. And Niall just goes, Zimmer, get over yourself. That's the soundtrack of my generation. What are you doing? What are you thinking? And you realize you don't actually know that some of the stuff actually means something to somebody. So yes, we did the Lion King at Coachella. And the thing which was astonishing was that everybody had told us people's attention span has gone and you can only play short pieces, etc. That Lion King piece is about 8 minutes. Pirates is 14. The Dark Knight is 22 minutes. Johnny actually said to me, they don't know it, but the second half of your show is 45 minutes of electronica. And because we go from Spider-Man Electro through Thin Red Line, which is really, it has all the trappings of a electronica thing, even though it disguises itself with strings. Into the 22 minutes of Dark Knight, it's into Inception and Time. It's full on.
You're a very quotable man, as we've established. I don't play an instrument. I play the computer, and you've already illuminated as to what's behind that. I teased you with the I'm just a lowly synth player in the Buggles video.
We all have a misspent youth, don't we? The Buggles video, I think, ruined a whole generation.
I remember it clearly. I was there that first day. It showed up on MTV. But you once said something that I was fascinated by, and that was that you try to get into the logos. And I was wondering if you could explain what that means, why it's important to you, and is it hard to get to happen?
Oh, no, I know. That was Sherlock Holmes. I think, okay, if you think about Lion King, up till that point, when you saw a Disney animated movie, you were pretty sure it was going to be a Disney princess. And it was probably going to be set in, I don't know, not in Africa. That I can guarantee you. And I thought, this is going to be in Africa, no princess. And so I thought, starting off with that African voice over the black will be a shock. And at the same time, it's asking permission from the audience to go somewhere that they didn't expect us to go and say, it's going to be okay. It's going to be different. It's not going to be the princess in Kansas that you expected, but it's going to be a hell of an adventure because, boldly we declare that we're going to be in Africa over the black. So I think that real estate of the logos, to set up the tone of where you're going to go with this is really, really important. I mean, the reason I say Sherlock, because I thought over the Warner Brothers logo, I could go and do some weird... I mean, Sherlock, that whole score was a bit of a battle. Not with Guy. Guy was totally into it, as were the producers. But it's still, and you have to understand this is the job. Somebody comes to you, a studio comes to you, a director hires you, but then the studio says, great, I'm glad you're doing this. We want something completely different and new. Okay. So you do completely different and new. And the first thing that happens is they're scared out of their minds because it's different and it's new. When they really meant, that thing you did last time that became quite successful, can we just do a new version of that? And the Sherlock thing, it's like big Christmas movie. And my insane idea was that I live in the center of London. I mean, I really do. In fact, I live on holy ground. I live on top of the old Marquee Club, where Hendrix started and the Stones started.
Yeah.
So it's quite the place. And, I was talking to a guy and I was thinking, and it's like still the same. It's like, it's heaving outside and there's a racket going on, every pub, like blasting. I was thinking, in Victorian times, if you walk down the street, the first pub probably had an out-of-tune piano player. Second pub had somebody playing the banjo. A third pub had somebody playing Irish fiddle. So if you put all of this together, so for the big Christmas release, it was going to be out-of-tune piano, banjo, and fiddle. And so I understand why that can be worrying when you expect, it was shot beautifully as well, so you expect you expect a lush orchestra, etc., etc., etc. And there I am, with a tuba, and accordion, I don't know, you really want to go and ruin the film industry, accordion is the one. So there was a bit of a conversation about that, and I phoned Guy and I said, I just got a phone call from Warner's. There might be a bit of a problem with the score. What are we going to do? And he goes, I'm at the airport. So I on my own, but it was good because I realized I figured something out. I mean, we just went through the movie. We didn't change a thing by the end of it. We changed everything and then we put it all back. Because sometimes what it takes is people need to get used to what you're doing. You're not supposed to just not be outraged by something new and foreign. I mean, in fact, it's I'm not as good as Stravinsky, or Richard Strauss, but there is something good about people feeling passionate and feeling outraged by the new.
Well, we started our conversation talking about Ennio Morricone and the impact he had on the filmmaking world, the music world. When the time comes, and I certainly hope it's a long, long way off for people to reflect on your work and talk about your work, what do you hope they say about you?
He wasn't as good as Morricone, but he had the same work ethic.
That ain't bad.
He rolled up his sleeves and did the work.
So I do have one final question for you. And as much as I'd like to do the Hans Zimmer, give me your Mount Rushmore of film composers, I can't bring myself to do that.
Mount Rushmore, where we're going to have Donald Trump any second now. That now that rumor has started, it's really about trying to lay pipe so that this actually happens.
So I'm not going to ask you that question. But what I'll try another gimmick question for you. I don't know if you've heard this, but NASA is going to be launching a rocket. NASA or Elon Musk, one of the two. And it's going to be a deep space probe hoping to find intelligent life that will come here and save us from ourselves. You, Hans Zimmer, lowly synth player, have been chosen to pick two pieces of music to represent all of humanity. You get to pick one of your own and one of anything else.
I'd pick... Oh, God. I probably would pick the Ave Verum Corpus by Mozart and by myself.
Yeah.
Thin Red Line, Journey to the Line seems to work for anything.
Perfect. Well, it's been a blast studying up on you to prepare for this. It's been even better talking to you. You've inspired me to learn more about film composing.
I think you know everything there is to know.
I just was waiting for you to tell me.
There you go.
Actually, even look, Amazon today, I got a book on film scoring. So,
It's all lies.
Probably, but, if you ever want to borrow it, just give me a call. For those keeping score at home, that would be 0 calls I've gotten from Hans about borrowing that book. But something tells me he can probably get by without it. Oh, who are we kidding? That guy is an absolute rock star in the world of film composing, and I get the sense that he would be in whatever field he pursued. Some people are just crazy talented like that. I hope you enjoyed our visit into the world of Hans Zimmer. The guy is all kinds of fun to talk to, and I appreciate that he gave us some of his precious time so that you could get to know him a little. If you would like to learn more about the incredibly talented musicians Hans was talking about for the Bleeding Fingers project, visit bleedingfingersmusic.com. It's a really cool project and a really gorgeous website at that, and good on him for leading the way on it. As you know, every week I give you a little shout out about Media Composer and Media Composer First, two very powerful nonlinear editors, one free and one super affordable. In honor of our guest today, I should also mention the same goes for Avid's industry-leading digital audio workstation, Pro Tools and Pro Tools First. Again, one's free and one's not too far from free. When you think about all you could do to further your career with it, it's a deal you can't pass up. So even if you've never tried Pro Tools before and maybe all you've ever done is video editing, you really should try your hand at sound editing and mixing, and even music creation. I have all kinds of fun messing around with it, and if I had any kind of talent, I would be unstoppable with Pro Tools and Media Composer in my arsenal. That will do it for this week. Hans Zimmer, I am still geeking out about that one. Could there be a more fun industry to talk about? I don't know, but talk about it again we will next week. Until then, this is Matt Fury thanking you for joining me right here on The Rough Cut.